Wow. This is overwhelming. I've used that word many times this week in preparation for the last lecture. I would first like to thank the Mortar Board Society. Thank you, AK and Logan and Meredith and Philip and the members of the executive committee for inviting me to be the last lecturer. I also want to. There are three big groups of students here. I've seen many of you before I came on stage. Those that are professional pharmacy students that have submitted nominations on my behalf, graduate students in the audience, and also honors college students. And I want to thank you for taking that moment, that bit of time to submit a nomination on my behalf, and that's very special to me. And I also want to thank the Honors College for the awesome meal I hear is being prepared. Is that right, DSG? At 5 o'clock following the last lecture, and I hope you have an opportunity to participate in that. I was placed in a bit of a situational dilemma these last few weeks when my colleagues had found out I was going to give the last lecture. I had a few colleagues ask me, "Are you leaving?" And I replied, "I don't think so." Basically, I told her that I don't know how contract renewals, they may not be slam dunks these seasons. And at the same time, I had students ask me, "Am I okay?" I think they were reflecting on the fact that the last lecture may mean, there was a faculty member who gave his last lecture because he had a terminal illness. And so I replied, "I think so. I think I'm okay." So it's been an interesting 2 weeks or 3 weeks trying to navigate through what the last lecture means and me attempting to explain what I want to accomplish. And I hope I can do that today. Public speaking is not my cup of tea. I've been here for 20 years. I'm excited to see my faculty colleagues here. I can't tell you how excited I've been to be a member of a productive and supporting faculty. I can't believe it's been 20 years, but thank you, colleagues, for joining me today. But like I said, I've never been a big fan of public speaking. It's been a chore for me for most of my life, and I have to work 10 times as hard as those who, for my appearance, seems to come really easy. My wife Cindy is here today, and hey, Anthony, you showed up. All right. No, I didn't see you took my seat. Great to have you here. I was able to attend. This has been a very proud week. I was able to attend my son's senior project in computer science this week. He presented. It was the first time I heard him give a lecture, and this may be the first time you've heard me lecture too. Is that right? Well, I've lectured at you, but this is really not about you. So. It's a little different, sorry. But Cindy was the first one to bear witness to my public speaking, my first public speaking experience. Do you remember that, Cindy? That was way back in 1992. I was a graduate student. I was giving a lecture at the American Society of Pharmacognosy in Williamsburg, Virginia. And it was my first one. And I anticipated a group of maybe about 30 or 40 people. The problem was we were working on the molecule, the drug Taxol at the time, and it was the hot molecule. It was not FDA approved as of yet. It was in phase 3 clinical trials. It was the fantastic clinical profiles. And because of that, any poster or podium presentation that had the word Taxol listed on it got pretty high billing. And that was a bad thing for me. So the audience was made up of maybe 400 or 500 people. Cindy was seated someplace in the back. She knew I was very anxious about giving my first public talk. And two things happened at that event that sort of changed my my life, my perspective on public speaking. The first is that I tried to act smarter than I was. And what I attempted to do was to reflect on the previous speaker's presentation and try to pull some information about what he said and incorporate it into my presentation. And when I got to the point of trying to remember his name, I said, and as we've all seen from the previous lecture, Dr. And I drew a blank, and I could not recover from it. It was one of those unrecoverable RAM read-write errors that occurred. And it was maybe 10 or 15 seconds. Is that about right? She says it seemed like hours. And I recovered, but it really gave me pause in terms of, literally pause, in terms of what I should do and what I should not do in preparing for lectures. And that was kind of terrifying at the time, as you can just imagine. The second thing that happened at that event was the podium and the stairs were very close to each other. And the podium was around here, the stairs were back here. And while I was moving around trying to show the audience with the laser pointer things going on here, I backed up and I almost fell off the stage. I pinwheeled, caught myself, and now you pharmacy students know the rest of the story, is why when I lecture, I'm comfortably standing right against the railing, okay? So sometimes those events, they've had an impact on me. My wife survived those events. I know she was shrinking in the seat as those things happened. So I promise you today that if I have a pause and I forget something, I've been there before, so it won't bother me. And number two, I'm going to stay right here and I'm not going to go near those stairs. Pharmacy students, professional pharmacy students are a really interesting group of students and from many perspectives. They're unique. I've interviewed students for nearly 20 years now, and I get a chance to see them before they even enter the university. And a lot of these early entry students and regular entry are interviewed by faculty. My colleagues have done this extensively, even more than I have. And, 9 out of 10 students will generally know what they want to do. They come to the table, and if the question is asked, why pharmacy, they have it figured out. Most of them, about 9 out of 10 on average, will have a family member, a relative, somebody they know who's worked in the profession and has been there and done that, and they are sure that this is what they're going to do in life. I'm most intrigued with that 1 out of 10 students that come to the table and really have no background in history, in having relatives or friends that have adopted or taken on pharmacy as a career in their life. And it may be easier today to understand how to make decisions on what you want to do. And I want to tell you a little bit about myself today. And the reason I called this Reflections and not something else was I want to really use this as a way to express my gratitude towards those who really helped me along the way. I want this to be not about me. I want this to be about others. And that's a hard thing to do, too, because there are so many people in my life that are influencers, that have really changed the way I do things and rearranged and reorganized my thought processes and how the best practices should be done in teaching and research and in service. Several things before I forget, because I don't want to miss the opportunity to. There have been a few career-changing events for me here while at the university. One was an event that solved my midlife academic crisis, and that was being a member of the Honors College faculty. That opportunity has really changed the way I see students, have really helped me to grow as a teacher and an educator. And I believe largely, perhaps one of the reasons I'm here today is because that whole process of interacting with freshmen and sophomore and students at the Honors College has really been invigorating. Other factors that have really remodeled the way I do business, we'll talk about in a little while. So my path is a little bit different than yours. I grew up in a single-parent household. My family members were destined and worked in the steel mill or coal mines or construction. And that was kind of my path. I really didn't think beyond that. I think you'll find out that a lot of faculty at this university and other universities haven't been primed to become educators and administrators and faculty members per se. The road they traveled was singular, and perhaps one or two people in their lives made a difference. And that was, I think, the same thing for me. I want to talk about some of those influencers, those mentors in my life. And before I do that, it's often common that folks will ask me, and students will ask me, what do you do? How do you spend your time? This is not really accurate, but it's kind of funny, I guess. This was a Ph.D.comics.com, and this is kind of what I do, sort of. You know, most faculty will spend their time teaching and in research and doing some service, and you know that. You can follow the trajectory of faculty, students. You know where we spend our time. We talk about these things. Sometimes departments have their own expectations. This says 175% effort on research, okay? And on the boundary, there's 20% teaching. And service isn't even part of the pie chart. That's pretty funny. And how professors would like to spend their time, don't tell me what to do, is what it says. So I find myself in this continuum somewhere, and I hope that I give due credit to those things that involve teaching and research and service. But, you know, the expectations also are really important. About 10 years ago, I had the opportunity of writing a book chapter that Dr. Noel Wilkin had edited, and it was really meant to help new faculty in schools of pharmacy understand what it takes to be successful, and that makes sense. And I wrote it from the perspective of a chemist in a school of pharmacy that has no pharmacy background and is on tenure track in a 4-year public institution. That's pretty categorized. But the perspective was that everybody comes in with a set of expectations as a new faculty member. And in that discussion, there was a hypothesis that really stood out to me, and I want to share that with you, and it's called the Met Expectation Hypothesis. And what it states, and this was presented probably in the 1970s, what it states is that when an individual's expectations are not met, there is a tendency or propensity to withdraw. And I started thinking about that again this past week in terms of, is that really true? When expectations are not met, do people generally withdraw? And I think there is some truth to this. And you all know this too. You know this as students. You knew this as adolescents when things aren't going your way and you don't get what you want. The first thing that's generally done is to go to your room and shut your door. Kids and adolescents sometimes may run away from home. College students, if the expectations are not met in the classroom, sometimes you just stop coming, right? Sometimes it may be more subtle. You may choose to turn on your cell phone and start searching the web or finding yourself on social media sites. But at some level you check out, and when expectations aren't met, you withdraw. And so thinking about that in my lecture, there are the value of those individuals in my life were really to help me understand that when my expectations aren't met, I should not withdraw. That I should stay with it. I should stick in there. I should make it a point to see things through. The pendulum swings both ways. So the people I want to sort of highlight tonight, and trust me, there are many, but these are folks largely in my formative years of education and research. So I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about those who are here today, although you've been major influences in my life too. So, let's get started. So, what do I do? Well, I don't want to spend too much time in talking about the research. I was telling someone earlier. So, when the announcement first came out, it said something to the effect, Dr. Rimoldi will be sharing some personal experiences. Okay, this morning it says, he will provide students with advice and insight on life matters beyond education in the classroom. I'm thinking, wow, that's a huge jump. And yet, I kind of already had it there. I wanted to provide you with my personal experiences, but they got it right, because I think embedded in this is a little bit of advice and a little bit of insight on matters beyond the classroom and matters beyond research. So some of the things that we do as medicinal chemists or those involved in environmental toxicology folks are to design, synthesize, and evaluate compounds. This is a standard pattern for those in the field of medicinal chemistry. I don't like to use many anecdotes and I don't like to use many analogies, but I've heard it said before that synthetic chemists are like the architects of molecules. And if that's true, then medicinal chemists are probably like the interior and exterior decorators, and we are the safety personnel, right? We make sure the house is in order, the molecule. We make sure that it has the right functionalities so that it's safe, that it doesn't produce any toxic or unwanted effects, and we make sure that it's efficacious. So we change, we modify drug structures in order to accommodate these things. So these are some of the fields I'm involved in, and I've had students graduate at various levels with expertise in many of these areas. I want to just share with you one research project that I thought was interesting. You know, Jackie Barden, who's a professor at Caltech, won the 2015 Priestley Medal from the American Chemical Society. And she's a rock star. She does, it seems like, everything right and everything at the highest level. And, you know, one of the things that she's been really involved with as part of her mission is to tell the general public what we do. And she made a statement in her speech that, you know, we've been doing a poor job as chemists in telling the public what we do. And she pretty much said, when someone asks you what you do, and you say, I'm a chemist, and they go, ugh, in a social setting, she said, explain to them, what do you do? You know, how do you make a difference? What are the things you do in the laboratory? How do they translate into something that people can grasp? And so that they don't just say, ugh. I've heard that. I've heard that all my life. Maurice, can you sort of agree with that? That once you throw the word chemistry out, you've already lost your audience. So I want to tell you one story about the project that really involves a chemistry solution to a big problem. And this was a problem that occurred in about 1999 to 2000. I had a colleague who used to be at the university. His name was Dan Schlenk. He was part of our environmental toxicology program. And one day in 2000, he pulled me aside and said, look, we have attorneys contacting me that are interested in retaining us as scientific experts because there's been a disaster that happened in Louisiana a few years, the previous year and early 2000. And the problem was that in 1999, 2000, Louisiana's crawfish production dropped from 41 million pounds to 16 million pounds. There was a large, widespread drought that year, but the farmers did not think it was due to the drought. In fact, Louisiana is a very interesting place. In the Atchafalaya Basin and other areas, it's some of the only places in the entire United States that you can grow two distinct crops. You can grow rice and now in aquaculture, grow crawfish. And crawfish is, the Louisiana crawfish production is probably worth 95% of the U.S. total production. It's a big crop, it's big business, and crop losses like this are sometimes not sustainable. The farmers were convinced it correlated with the previous year's new introduction of a spray coat seed for rice, the use of Icon. The active ingredient's Fipronil. It was manufactured by the company Aventis. Aventis, in the same time scale, had been bought out by Bayer. Bayer sold the rights of Fipronil or Icon to BASF. It's a long trajectory in terms of who owned Fipronil during these years. Fipronil was sprayed on rice used to combat the rice water weevil. So farmers wanted to use this newly introduced pesticide, newly introduced insecticide, spray coated on their rice seeds. My colleague Dan and I got together. We began to conduct field and laboratory studies, and at the same time the farmers had filed a class action lawsuit. We had some original problems. Fipronil was introduced, and you may have seen this before, in a number of products. Its production is probably in over 50 products in the United States. You've seen it. You've probably put this on your cats and your dogs. Spot on, Frontline. All of these agents contain as the active ingredient Fipronil to various concentrations. Also used as a termite control agent, used to control ants, roaches, and also other insects. So what's the problem with Fipronil, and how does it correlate back to a crawfish kill? Well, remember that I'm not a biologist, but I believe that you can classify crawfish as an arthropod, and therefore somewhere along the lines of biology, right, Dr. Oakes, it falls into a big bug, and that's what I've always called crawfish, big mud bugs, right? And in fact, there's rationale to why Fipronil would kill off crawfish, because of this relationship and the where crawfish sit in the whole tree of life. So this is the structure of Fipronil. Pharmacy students will realize that Fipronil is a heterocyclic drug. I'm sure all of you can predict whether or not this compound would be perhaps orally active. Unlike human drugs, where you can use Lipinski's rule to predict bioavailability, agrochemistry and agrochemical sectors use their own rules. And their own rules are to predict whether or not a compound has a high enough log P to be persistent, to hang around a long time, to cause perhaps an insecticidal or herbicidal or fungicidal effect. But they use the same criteria: molecular weight, log P, number of hydrogen bond donors and acceptors. Fipronil follows the best potential sort of profile in terms of having a molecule that is a perfect example of an environmentally active insecticide based on its physiochemical properties. It hangs around for a certain period of time. It gets degraded in the environment by UV light and water and other processes. And the metabolites up to this point were deemed relatively harmless. So Dan and I started a mission, a very quick one. We received word that this was something that we should probably start to do quickly. He started to perform field and laboratory studies. This involved bringing in batches of crawfish into the lab, into tanks, dosing them with active drug Fipronil, as well as Icon seeds. My role in this project was to prepare, because there was little information on the degradation products of Fipronil, but the corresponding Fipronil sulfone and Fipronil sulfide. These were two metabolites, environmental metabolites, that were identified in soil and in water samples even before Icon or Fipronil was brought to market, at least all the field trials. So we had been able to effectively prepare two metabolites, the sulfone and the sulfide, in reasonably good yields. Those compounds were also screened against Louisiana crawfish or Procamberus species, and those were, I won't go through all the details, but they're highly toxic These compounds produced 100% mortality after 48 hours when exposed to these icon sprayed rice seeds. These were confirmed not only in the laboratory here in Fraser Hall, but also in the field in some of the tailwater experiments that were done in Louisiana. These studies, I believe, were very important. Dan served as an expert witness and gave depositions on these studies, but I think it was some of the reasons we had done the studies was to show that if there's a cause and effect, we should be able to measure it. And I think it's some of the reasons why Icon was pulled from the market in 2004. And shortly thereafter, the Louisiana crawfish farmers received a settlement, and a district judge awarded them $24 million for their losses and attributed to Fipronil toxicity. And we were able to publish some of this very quickly. This was probably in a 6-month time scale that we were able to complete these studies and publish the work. So those are sort of the things that I'm proud to be a part of, and at least to be able to contribute a little bit, not only to the chemistry, but also to perhaps a bigger picture that I feel like some way I've helped those farmers, sort of get what was coming to them, and that was compensation for their losses. So that's one example. There are others, but that's all I want to talk about in terms of research. I do want to talk briefly about some of the powers of academic mentoring. If you don't have an academic mentor, you shouldn't leave here before next week is over, before you start talking and finding one. Getting yourself an academic mentor is really central to your development. I think a lot of the time students go through the process of seeing their advisor, somebody that just gives them information about courses, as enough, and it isn't. And I'll tell you why. There's career opportunities for those who are involved in academic mentoring. It permits the protege to acquire new knowledge and to grow within an organizational structure. The definitions are many. Here is one that I thought was really, sort of nails it. Mentoring is a process by which persons of superior rank, special achievements, and prestige instruct, counsel, guide, and facilitate the intellectual and/or career development of persons identified as proteges. So the mentor-protege relationship is critical. I told you that I came from a background in which there was no one in my family that really had graduated with a college degree. I didn't have much direction, but there were individuals that I want to highlight as really helping me along the way. This is Cindy, you'll recognize him. This is my high school chemistry teacher, Mr. David Kobaugh. David wrote on that, this is from my yearbook, he says, "To Mr. Chemistry from Mr. Chemistry." So he figured out sometime in 11th or 12th grade that I was destined to somehow, somewhere do chemistry. I haven't spoke to him in a while, but there was something I've always reflected on. What did he leave me with? And one of the things that I can always remember Mr. Kobaugh saying is that you need to ask yourself, how do I go about solving this problem? And it sounded corny and ridiculous at the time, but I think what he was trying to accomplish was really two things. Was for me to remember that he would leave us with something that he always said that you would always remember would go back to him. And the second thing was that he really fostered critical thinking, and he paved the way for me. He allowed me to see chemistry as really that even though other expectations in high school were not met, that he met my expectations and satisfied my desire to really find my place in something to do with science and chemistry. And to him, I'm grateful. George Domitius was my instructor professor at the University of Pittsburgh. To him, I say thank you because he made organic chemistry come to life. That's not easy to do. I know faculty here that have done that, and kudos to you, because that's a very difficult thing to do, is to take structures and the concepts that are embedded in analysis of complex molecules and make them come to life. And he did that for me. So I moved from chemistry to organic chemistry. He connected thought with application. If you haven't done research and you're trying to sort of think about doing research, don't wait. Start as early as you can, students. If you're part of an honors college thesis project and you need to do research, get in the lab as soon as possible. Don't wait till the end so it just becomes an afterthought. Laboratory research changes your life. It does. You find the mentor there. That's where you'll start finding academic mentors. Most of them will be your research mentors. I've had two mentors at Virginia Tech, my Ph.D. advisor, David Kingston, and my visiting scientist who spent his time in the lab with me. And both were indeed committed to my professional and scientific development. I tried to think about what they left me, and I think it's pretty easy. When you're a graduate students, you know that you're asked to work hard, stay focused, and act right. And that acting right I learned fairly quickly. These two individuals, David Kingston and Leslie, both had worked as graduate students under Nobel laureates. David Kingston worked for Sir Lord Todd, and Leslie Gunnar-Talakta worked for Sir Derek Barden. And so there was a lot at stake to not just doing good research, performing good bench work, but also acting right. And I learned that from them. I told you before that the molecule that really helped to spur my interest in medicinal pharmaceutical chemistry was Taxol, and I won't say any more about that. Neil Castagnoli was my postdoctoral advisor. My wife and I had been married in graduate school. We had Anthony in graduate school. We had worked in a shelter home, and we had an additional 6 kids in a community shelter home while I was a postdoc. So when I tell you all that I understand how busy your life is, I really get it. Okay, there's aspects of life that are always on the table that you have to leverage against your academics and your research. But it's possible, okay? It's really possible. Neil helped me to see that. He was a thought leader. He talked to me about big ideas. He spoke about the value and the importance of collaboration. And he was one of the few that trained me to be a faculty member. He actually, between Leslie Gunnar-Talakta and Neil Castagnoli, they moved me into a thought process where chemistry can be done in an environment, in an institute of higher learning, at a higher educational level. And I think that was something that I will always remember. He was, some of the things that we did together was, and again, he was a big idea man, but he was responsible for really looking at the detailed pathway of MPTP toxicity. He was an endowed professor in the Center for CNS Disorders and Parkinson's disease. So we spent a lot of time working on making and synthesizing and testing various compounds as potential neurotoxicants and compounds that may rescue toxic events in those with Parkinson's disease. Well, you know, you don't stop having mentors when you leave school. And I think if you follow my course, you'll realize that every person along the way, I had to rely on to tell me what to do. I had no one in chemistry or in higher education to really bank on. So my chemistry teacher said, you need to go to college. My university professor said, you need to go to grad school. Grad school professor said, you need to do a postdoc. And then postdoctoral advisor said, you need to go look at university faculty positions. And that's what I did. When I came here in '95, one of the amazing things that my department did was to create and foster an environment where faculty members didn't have to struggle, and that there was a sense of community. You know, collegiality is really based on sharing responsibilities and values within a group. And Ron Bourne, and I saw Ron walk in. Where are you, Ron? Are you still here? Thank you, Ron. Appreciate you coming tonight. And I want to thank you for, you know, he took me on as a junior faculty member in '95 as a formal mentor as part of an AACP program for faculty, senior junior faculty mentoring program. But I think it was bigger than that. He took me under his wing and really taught me that, you know, Ole Miss is indeed the center of the universe. That hasn't changed. I still believe it is today. That, you know, one needs to maintain a balance in the things that we do in teaching and research and service, and that we all need to have a vision. And he's helped me to understand the value of fostering lifelong learning, and I'm grateful to you, Ron, for those, for still being there as a mentor. And like I said, I have others that I'm grateful to. So it's not just a career. You know, this is the easy part. The easy part is someone telling you that you need to do chemistry, or you need to go into grad school, or I think you need to do this. But, you know, what you really get from it, and what I've gotten from it, is the psychosocial aspect of mentoring. Provides enhanced identity. It, you know, is a continuing support mechanism, and the sharing of dilemmas. These are the things I didn't ask for. These are the things I got. And I'm truly grateful for the mentors that continue to help me along the way. What do they do? What have they done? It's always, you know, inspired me. They're inspirational on many levels. They invested in me. They identify with me, and, you know, I don't know how else to say this, but they invite people, they invite you into their space. They invite you into their world, into their sphere, and that's not something that's done just, you know, because. These are intentional actions. And I think mentorship in my life has really changed the way I view what my responsibility is today. As few teachers or mentors ever see a student through an entire journey. Rather, we accompany students along some legs and some parts of their journey. And if we are to play our part well, we need to view their movement with a broader eye to see whence they have come and whither they are headed. And I think that is really true. I started to create a teaching philosophy years ago. Our School of Pharmacy really has done an outstanding job with having faculty think about what they do and take an introspective look at the world and ask the big questions. Why do you teach the way you do? Not just what do you teach? And, you know, I've tried to put this in my own words, and sometimes others just say it better. And the entrepreneur Richard Branson says, train people well enough so they can leave, and treat them well enough so they don't want to. And, you know, my teaching philosophy, for me to memorize it, is sort of in this acronym form where you have passion, rapport, organization, and focus. These are the things that I hold sacred. I may not be the most organized person if you ever come to my office, but I hope that my organization shows through in different levels and in the things I think and the things I say. And I hope that over the years I've served my mentors well in training people, training students well, in the classroom, in the lab, and treating them well as well as I want to be treated. And I hope you can do the same when you finish up, to not only find a mentor and take that responsibility of keeping that mentorship, protege relationship alive, but also being mentors. There are many on campus. I have outstanding colleagues that are willing and ready. And I just want to say, you know, I've had a fantastic group of students over the years. I hope I've helped them to find their place. You know, I've always wondered if I've done the right thing in directing them to go to a specific place or a specific career. And let me tell you, a few years ago, the Honors College had, as part of the Ventures program, had sent out students nationwide and asked them to ask people from all walks of life, what is the good life? And, you know, they didn't ask me. And if they had, I would have told them, it's right here. The best life is being a faculty member in an institution like Ole Miss. And I can tell you right off the bat that I believe my colleagues would agree with that 100%. So I want to thank you for your kind attention. Thank you. I told you 30 minutes. I went 35 to 40. So I'm sorry. I'm glad the air conditioning kicked on somewhere in the middle. Thank you for your kind attention. Thank you for inviting me to serve as the last lecturer. Thanks.